You know, when you think of ancient Egypt, what pops into your head? Probably something straight out of a movie, right? Mummies, curses, crazy booby traps, maybe some lost, super advanced technology. But what if the real story was actually even more clever? Okay, let's get into it and separate the Hollywood hype from the genuine master engineering of one of history's greatest civilizations.
So, really, picture it. When you imagine breaking into a pharaoh's tomb, what do you see? Giant rolling boulders, walls shooting poison darts, ancient curses that follow your home? Today, we're going to dig into the evidence and figure out what was real, what was pure fiction, and what was, well, something surprisingly in between.
All right, first things first. Let's tackle the biggest legends head-on, those deadly curses and Indiana Jones-style traps that have totally shaped how we see Egyptian tombs for more than 100 years.
So this whole idea of a pharaoh's curse, it really blew up at a very specific moment in time, 1922. The guy who paid for the King Tut expedition, Lord Carnarvon, died from an infected mosquito bite just 6 weeks after they opened the tomb. The media around the world absolutely lost its mind. And just like that, a legend was born. But it was a modern one, cooked up by newspapers, not by ancient priests.
Okay, so if magic curses are off the table, what about all the mechanical traps? Well, according to Egyptologist Reg Clark, the answer is a big fat no, with a really fascinating catch. The ancient architects, see, they weren't wasting time on complicated traps. They were masters of brute force security and just plain brilliant engineering. And here's what that actually looked like. On the left, you've got the Hollywood fantasy. Poison darts, crushing walls, you name it. But on the right, you've got the reality, which honestly is way more impressive. I mean, we're talking immense granite portcullises. These are basically gigantic stone garage doors, slamming down to block tunnels. They'd seal up corridors with tons of rubble, and in some of the really early tombs, they even designed them so huge piles of sand would collapse on anyone trying to tunnel in. It wasn't about one single gotcha trap, it was about making robbery a physically exhausting, nearly impossible job.
And this is where the story gets really good. Just when you think the whole booby trap thing is a total myth, one pyramid comes along and changes everything. The pyramid of Amenemhat III had a security system so clever, so unique, it is the closest thing anyone has ever found to a real-life mechanical trap.
So how did this thing work? It's genius, really. The architect basically predicted that tomb robbers would try to tunnel around the main, heavily blocked passage. So at the end of their new tunnel, they'd find a small chamber filled with blocking stones. But here's the trick. The moment they started moving those stones to get to the burial chamber, that was the trigger. It would release these enormous cylindrical drums of solid granite that would come rolling down the main passage, sealing it off forever. The very act of clearing the last hurdle was designed to spring the trap. But, you know, amazing architecture was just one layer of the security system. The Egyptians also relied on something we'd find pretty familiar today: people. They had actual guards, patrols, and a whole class of professionals whose job was to protect these sacred places. And how do we know this? Check this out. This is a whistle. It's 3,300 years old, carved from a cow's toe bone, and it was found at Amarna, the capital city built by the pharaoh Akhenaten. Archaeologists think this is what the guards used to signal each other while patrolling restricted areas like the royal tombs. It's an incredible, tangible link to the actual sounds of ancient security. These guards were known as the Shemsu. The word basically translates to followers or attendants. Think of them as a professional force, kind of a mix between a royal bodyguard and an early police force. Their whole job was to protect the king, the palace, and other high-value sites, which of course absolutely included the tombs in the necropolis.
And this isn't just some word from an old text. We have actual reliefs, like this one, showing the Shemsu themselves, organized, armed, and in formation. You can just imagine them patrolling those quiet, lonely valleys with that simple bone whistle ready to sound the alarm. Okay, so we've looked at a few solved puzzles. Now let's switch gears and dive into one of Egypt's most baffling and controversial artifacts. We've talked about what we know. Now let's talk about something we really don't understand: the Disk of Sabu.
So this thing was found in a tomb that's 5,000 years old, and it is a complete puzzle. It's about 2 feet across, it's carved from this ridiculously fragile stone called schist, and its shape is, well, it looks impossibly modern. Seriously, what in the world was this thing for?
The theories about what it is are all over the map, from the totally mundane to the completely mind-blowing. Some Egyptologists think it's just a very fancy ritual bowl for pouring offerings.
Others think it might be a tool for stirring mash when they were brewing beer. And then there's the wild one, that it was a key part of an advanced chemical factory.
Its bizarre, almost machine-like look has just set the internet on fire with speculation. And this Reddit comment, it perfectly captures that feeling. People look at it and see an engine part, a flywheel, even a hubcap, anything but a 5,000-year-old bowl. The design just feels like it's from the wrong time.
Let's dig into that wilder theory for a second. Some researchers have actually proposed this was part of something called a solvay process, used in a chemical tower to make pure sodium carbonate, or natron. That's the special salt they needed for mummification. This would mean they had chemical engineering technology thousands of years ahead of schedule. But here's the huge problem with that, or really any mechanical theory: the material. Schist is super brittle. It would almost certainly shatter under any real-world stress. So for now, the mystery continues.
Okay, so we're going to go from a big, mysterious artifact to a tiny object that actually solves a historical puzzle. We're shifting from something whose story is a total unknown to a little piece of metal from the era of Egyptian rule that has a story so clear it's literally rewriting the history books.
2,270 years. Just let that sink in for a second. That's how old a single gold coin is that was recently dug up in Jerusalem. And it might just look like a number, but this one coin is so important, it's making historians completely rethink an entire era of that city's history.
And this is it. This gorgeous gold coin has a portrait of Queen Berenice II, who is a really powerful ruler in Ptolemaic Egypt. It was probably made in Alexandria, and it's one of only a handful like it ever found. But the revolutionary part is where it was found, in an archaeological dig right in Jerusalem. Now, to get why this is such a big deal, you need a little context. For a very long time, the common belief among scholars was that after Jerusalem's first temple was destroyed way back in 586 BC, the city basically became a small, poor, isolated town for centuries. This coin, minted during a major war, lands smack in the middle of that supposed period of decline.
The impact of this one little coin is huge. First, it proves Jerusalem wasn't isolated at all. It clearly had economic and political ties to Egypt, one of the superpowers of the day. It suggests the city wasn't just scraping by, it was thriving and rebuilding way earlier than we thought. The coin even gives us hints about Queen Berenice's power, since she was basically running Egypt as regent while her husband was off fighting a war.
And this isn't just my take. As Dr. Yifta Shalev from the Israel Antiquities Authority said, this find has broad significance. It's not just a cool piece of treasure, it's a piece of hard evidence that fundamentally changes the story of an entire city. It just goes to show you, the story of the past is never really finished. From busting Hollywood myths and finding near booby traps, to discovering mysterious artifacts and rewriting history with a single coin, the sands of Egypt and all the lands it touched clearly have so many more secrets to give up. The only question is, what are we going to find next?